Hello and welcome to part 3 of the holding tutorial. In this part, the practical part, the final part of this tutorial, we're going to be actually looking at how do we do the hold in the aircraft itself once we are inside the airplane. We are in a Baron 58 at the moment, and we are flying at 6,000 feet and off the northern coast of Egypt, closer near the city of Alexandria, and we're going to do our VOR today over Alpha X-ray Delta VOR. The same situation applies to any VOR, so it doesn't matter whatever VOR, it's exactly the same concept. In a moment, the ATC is going to give us an instruction to an instruction for us to hold over Alpha X-ray Delta, and we're going to do one step at a time. How do we do what we have explained in the previous two parts in practical? So without any delay, let's go ahead and start. So I will unpause the simulator, and so ATC would instruct. I'll do the both sides. So ATC would say Egypt Air 665, proceed direct Alpha X-ray Delta VOR, expect a holding over Alpha X-ray Delta inbound course 270, and we read back the clearance. And the next step for us to do is to proceed direct to the station to Alpha X-ray Delta. Now you need to know the frequency of Alpha X-ray Delta, so it is in our case it's 115.9, and so we switch it on from the standby to the nav1, and you can see that the HSI now displays some information. I would also suggest that we should do the same for VOR number for nav number 2. So also I set 115.9 and we activate. Now VOR number 1 is for this instrument here, the horizontal situation indicator. VOR number 2 is for the HSI, for the RMI, radio magnetic indicator. This is the horizontal situation indicator, HSI, and this is the radio magnetic indicator. And now we can see that the VOR, once we tuned in the VOR frequency, we can now have the reading of the distance, our distance from Alpha X-ray Delta, which is now 10.7 miles, 10.6 miles, and we are about 6 minutes away from the station. And this is the distance measuring equipment, the DME. So we can now proceed direct Alpha X-ray Delta. If you can see, it's the easiest way is to follow the radio magnetic indicator. So all you need to do is to follow this green line, and so our autopilot is at the moment on, controlling our both altitude and heading. So what I need to do is to make a slight left turn, and the aircraft will be turning to the left, and so we proceed direct to the station. I would also try as much as possible to maintain a constant speed. This is in our case I'm going to try and maintain 160 knots, give or take 5. But as much as you can, try to make a constant indicated airspeed, as this will be very important in on-holding pattern. I'm going to discuss how this will affect the hold that we're going to do. So let's make a turn as much as possible. Try to align this green arrow with the orange dot at the top, so that we are exactly going towards Alpha X-ray Delta VOR. As you can see, here is the airport, Alpha X-ray Delta, and the VOR is somewhere around the airport. We are about 7.7 miles from the VOR. The next step is to determine the entry, and I'm going to pause the simulator here so I can explain in detail what I mean. Since this is a gauge airplane, it doesn't have an FMC or an FMS, and it is not a glass cockpit, so it's not easy for you to determine your position. I really recommend that you have a pen and a paper along with in your desk, so that you can easily determine which entry you're going to fly, and draw it out. If you don't have a pen and a paper, pause and get one so you can practice. And once you have that, you draw the hold on the paper as we did in the previous part. And the next step, once you draw the hold, is to set your horizontal situation indicator to your inbound course. So the ATC instructed us that we fly an inbound course of 270. So as accurate as you can, try to set your horizontal situation indicator so that it is exactly 270. Now 270 is west, and so we set the arrow to 270, which is the inbound course. And finally, once we do that, the thing remaining is to determine the entry we're going to fly. Now this is a little bit tricky. Sometimes people at the beginning will find this a little bit difficult, but the easiest way that I use is, once I draw the hold on a paper and a pen with me, I take the paper and stick it to the screen. Now this may sound strange, but you actually take the paper and stick it to the screen so that the fix on the paper is exactly coinciding with the aircraft symbol in the HSI. Now this is a little bit hard to imagine, and so I actually did it and took a photo. And so this is a photo. All what I did is take the piece of paper, which I drew the hold on, stick it to the screen, and you can see that the HSI is in the background here, and put the fix, or Alpha X-ray Delta, coinciding with the aircraft symbol in the background. So this is the aircraft symbol. All I did is put the fix Alpha X-ray or the VOR Alpha X-ray Delta over the symbol, so, as you can see, and I will see which sector am I coming from. So the aircraft is flying, since I set the aircraft symbol is, as you can see here, pointing towards the top, and so if I'm coming from down here to the top, I'm going to be into the teardrop entry sector. This is a little bit tricky at the beginning, but once you practice it a lot, you will easily get it, and you will not need any paper and a pen. You will not need to stick the paper into the screen later on. You will be able to determine the position easily once you practice it a lot, but at the beginning, take a paper and a pen, stick it to the screen, as you can see, and determine which sector you are coming from. So the bottom sector here, as you can see the arrow, the airplane is flying from here to there because the aircraft symbol is pointing upwards. We're now going upwards, and so if you can see the symbol is pointing upwards, the arrow pointing upwards, 12 o'clock is lying into the sector of 270 to 200, so we're going to fly a teardrop entry. Now if we remember the teardrop entry, it was this, there were 4 steps for the teardrop entry. First step is to proceed direct the VOR, and here we are actually doing that. We are now 7 miles. Second step, once we are over the VOR, we fly a 30-degree difference. A 30-degree difference from the outbound course. Outbound course here is 090, so 30 degrees difference. We should be flying a heading of 060. And as you can see, currently we are heading of 062, which is 2 degrees different. We're going to turn by 2 degrees. Count 1 minute. Once 1 minute finishes, we turn to the right to intercept the inbound course of 270. So let me unpause the sim and let's actually do it. And so we are about 5 minutes from the station. And so in preparations, to make sure that you have the HSI is set to the inbound, your heading is proceeding direct to the station, and you can visualize what we're going to do before we actually do it. So in your mind you should have, okay, number 1, step number 1, 2, 3, after this, after the VOR I should be flying at 30 degrees heading 060, and then after 1 minute turning right to intercept 270. Now for the timing, once we are over the VOR, we're going to time 1 minute. And now you may time this on your smartphone. If you have a phone, you can easily time 1 minute. Or this is the in this Baron 58 we have a small clock on the yoke. So if we pass the VOR at second 60, we can say, okay, next 60 is going to be our 1 minute finished. So now 4 miles. I'm going to, if you can see from outside here, here is the viewer station. So we're almost direct to the viewer station. There is a slight turbulence. The autopilot is currently on. We always try to maintain a constant speed of 160. And if you can see in the GPS position here, just for reference, we are going to Alpha X-ray Delta. We're actually a little bit to the right, so we take a couple of headings to the left. So we're now 2 miles. Once we get closer to the viewer, this arrow is going to be, the RMI is going to be very sensitive because we're very close, and so you can find it deflecting quite quickly. And so always monitor sometimes your position from the GPS to make sure you are going on the correct track. Okay, so we're now passing the station, and now the RMI will flip backwards because we're now going, the viewer is going to be on our 6 o'clock. And as you can see, now we start turning to heading of 060, a couple of headings to the left. Now you can see here in the GPS there is a track, because as you can see we have 5 knots wind, and this 5 knots is going to blow us either to the left or to the right, increase our ground speed or decrease our ground speed. Actually we started also the clock at second number 33, so the next 33 we're going to start turning to the right. So we should be making sure that we fly as much as possible a track of 060, because as you can see the winds are changing, and if you set a heading of 060, maybe due to the winds you're actually flying a different track. The winds are blowing you from the supposed track, so whenever possible monitor your track, make sure it is 060. And so if you look at the times, we have about 15 seconds to go. Alright, so a track of 060, it's a heading of 059. As you can see, winds are making a difference of 1 degree, but because it's 5 knots, sometimes it's 15 knots or 20 knots, which will make a great effect. So you need to monitor track and heading. Now 33, we start turning to the right to intercept the 270 inbound radial, inbound course. Also monitor your ground speed. You can see that now our ground speed is increasing because we are having, it is changing from a tailwind, from a headwind to a tailwind. And as we turn, we need as much as possible to maintain a constant ground speed. And as you can see here, the HSI is catching up. We are trying, the autopilot is flying, which is, he flies an almost standard rate. And so you can see that he is maintaining the dash with the dash. So we're now a radial of 060. If we slightly overshoot, as you can see here, we just continue a little bit further to the right to regain. But as this is a difference of like 3-4 degrees. Make sure also we're flying a track of 270, and as a check, we should be 1 minute into the inbound leg. So we started at about 00, 03 or 0 something close to that. So if we reach Alpha X-ray Delta with the same number 0, then we know we have an accurate leg. And now once we are passing Alpha X-ray Delta, we continue holding normally, turning right and counting when we are abeam. And I'm going to show you that, but let us first reach to the station. Make sure we're flying a track of 270 as much as possible. And we are now approaching Alpha X-ray Delta. As you can see, almost 10 seconds to go. Once we get closer, the HSI is going to be unreliable because we're very close to the station. So you make sure you track 270. And as you can see, almost at the 5th second, which is very close, plus minus 3 seconds. Now we start turning. We're almost over Alpha X-ray Delta. We start turning to a 090 heading. And the autopilot is making its best to fly a constant rate, standard rate, 3 degrees per second. And now you can notice our ground speed was 168, so 166 now. And due to the 5 knot wind, it's going to change because we're changing our direction to the opposite. 167, so we know now we're going to have a little bit of a tailwind, so we reduce our speed by just a knot or two to maintain as much as possible. And we start counting when we are abeam. That means when the RMI points to our 3 o'clock position. That means that we are making a 90-degree angle with the VOR. So once we are at abeam, you might finish your turn before your abeam, you might finish your turn after your abeam. Make sure you start the time when you're abeam. Exactly. Okay. Now we start the timer. We were abeam a little bit earlier, but so we start minusing 5, so we are almost at the second 25, the next 25. Track 088, couple of degrees to the right. Make sure it's a 90 track. What happened was that we were the turn took a little bit longer, and so the RMI pointed backwards. It didn't reach our 3 o'clock. That means that we were the VOR we had been abeam, but I forgot to mention that I didn't show it to you in the video. We were concentrating probably on a turn, so I will show it to you in the next entry. The same thing is going to happen, but track of 09, as much as possible maintain a track of 090. And since we started the clock at second 40, we start turning right again to intercept. It's always a 1 minute. As you can see, there are many variables. You have to monitor your heading, your turn, your altitude, your speed, your time. Okay. And now we, as much as possible, maintain a track of 270. Track 266, 267, 268, 270 now. So, if we look at the clock, 1 minute, so it should be reaching the station at the next 10th second of minute 32. And our speed decreased by 2 knots, so that try to maintain it in a plus minus 5. Plus minus 5 knots. Sometimes 2 knots will not make a huge difference, but as much as possible make sure that you are flying plus or minus 2. Now once we're getting close, we're now 1.8 miles. The HSI and the RMI are going to be a little bit unreliable, but make sure we're flying to the west of a track of 270. Okay, I am going to pause once we are over Alpha X-ray Delta so I can show you what we have done. Okay, so we pause now, and if I show you on the map what we have done, and so as you can see, we were off the coast, we proceeded direct Alpha X-ray Delta, we went into an teardrop entry, we went into the VOR, turning to the right, Alpha X-ray Delta, but and we start timing from when we are beam, but we forgot to do that because I was busy doing, there were many variables and I missed one, so we should have started timing when we were abeam, so that's why they timed a little, like 5-10 seconds later, and so you can see the outbound leg was extended by probably 10 seconds. We turn right, go to the VOR again, and that's a teardrop entry. And so I'm going to pause the video, reposition the aircraft in a different situation so we can have a look at the parallel entry this time. Alright, welcome back. Now we are the aircraft. I have repositioned the aircraft so that we are in a different entry, in a different sector. We are 6,000 feet and we're almost 6 miles from Alpha X-ray Delta, 2 minutes inbound. Now the same hold, we're going to do an inbound course of 270, ATC instructs us to do so. So the first step, we proceed direct Alpha X-ray Delta, which we did, so you make the radio magnetic indicator look at us at our 12 o'clock. So we are now proceeding towards Alpha X-ray Delta. The next step is to set your horizontal situation indicator HSI to the inbound course. So as you can see, it is set on heading of 270. Now you have the hold with you drawn on a paper and pen. The third step is to, if you are finding it difficult to determine your entry, you take your paper, stick it to the screen, as you can see here in the photo which I'm going to show you. That's what I actually did. Heading 270 matches with heading 270 of the horizontal situation indicator, and you can find that the VOR fix is on the aircraft symbol, but make sure that the 270 heading on your hold on your piece of paper is exactly matching the horizontal situation indicators 270. And we are going to fly you can see that the aircraft is going to be flying towards the Alpha X Delta from the parallel entry sector, the second largest sector, and so we're going to execute a parallel entry this time. Now, how do we do a parallel entry? Well, the first step, we proceed Alpha X-ray Delta. Once we're over Alpha X-ray Delta, we turn to the heading of the outbound, the heading of the outbound course, which is going to be 090. 1 minute, and then we turn left, and then we're going to have a slight overshoot and come back, intercept 270. So let's go ahead and unpause the simulator. 4 miles to go, and also as a reference I'm going to keep the GPS here so you can see where our position, where are we actually going. Three miles to go, almost 1 minute. Once we get close to the station, the readings on the instruments are going to be very sensitive, and they're going to make large changes. But as much as possible, make sure that you are going towards the station. If I change the direction, you're going now proceeding direct towards the station. We have a slight winds of almost 5 knots. The RMI will now start to deviate because we're over the station. You can see now we start to turn, heading of 090. Now the VOR is behind us, and so the RMI is showing that the VOR is at the moment behind. We are now almost stabilized, only heading 090, so we start the clock at 45. So the next 45 we start the turn to intercept the inbound course. Try as much as possible a track of 090. Our ground speed is going to be 175. "20 seconds to go." Okay, almost 45. Turn left to intercept a 270, but since this is a parallel entry, we are quite close to the inbound course. We're going to overshoot it first, and then as quickly as possible try to re-establish. Ground speed has decreased by a little bit, so increased thrust, minimal adjustments, just that you can maintain as much as possible, make it as precise as possible. Now trying to intercept the inbound leg, an inbound course of 270. As you can see in the RMI, we're now at the 260 and it's increasing. Okay, we start the turn now. Now we proceed Alpha X-ray Delta. Okay, so what we did, we now did a parallel entry, and we, as quickly as possible, tried to recapture the inbound 270. Now all we need to do is to continue flying on the inbound leg until we pass the VOR and turn right to continue a normal hold on a racetrack. Now you can see the DME is never going to read 0 because we have some altitude. Because it will only read 0 once we are exactly near the station on the ground. But since we are in the air, there is still some distance between us and the VOR below. And so this distance, this altitude distance, is so almost 1 mile. So now we start to turn to a 090 heading, and once we are abeam, we start our clock. In the previous entry, I missed the abeam part. I was distracted by different factors, and so this time I'm going to concentrate on this one. Make sure that the VOR comes to our right hand side. Our speed is increasing, so we decrease it a little bit. Okay, we're almost abeam now. and the VR is to our right, as you can see. Now we are abeam. We start counting the clock. 45. So the next 45, we start turning to the right. Okay, we monitor our track, monitor our heading, monitor our ground speed, monitor the time. So once you get enough practice with the hold, you can later on disconnect the autopilot and do it manually. So you can get the feeling of how the aircraft flies manually in a hold once you get familiar with the concepts of the hold itself. And now we're almost second number 45 and we start to turn. Once we start to turn like 2 seconds before the time, so that the aircraft has the time to start turning. So once it starts turning, we're exactly at 45, just as a precision movement, that's all. And we notice our ground speed decrease, so we increase our ground speed by just slightly. Okay, try to intercept 270. Since our ground speed was a little bit slow, we came in the turn a little bit early, and so we fly to a difference of 5 degrees, just so we recapture 270 and we continue back our turn. It is just a process of readjusting yourself onto the inbound leg as much as accurate as possible. Now almost 270, and this is almost 270, so and we should have been timing once we finished our turn. Our turn was going to take 1 minute, so we should have timed from the previous 45. So once this reaches 45, we should be over the hold. As you can see, 41, 42, 43, 45, and we are almost over the station. And so since we were a little bit slow, that is why it has a little bit 5 or 10 seconds increase, as you can see. Now we pause and to discuss what we have done. When we finished our turn took 1 minute, and so we started our turn from the outbound leg at second number 45. Our turn should have taken 1 minute, since it is a standard rate, and so we should have been on the inbound leg at second 45, and we should be over Alpha X-ray Delta at the second 45. But as you can see, this is the effect of wind, and we had about 5 knots of winds, and so our ground speed decreased, and this made us a little bit slower, and so our inbound leg took more time because we were slower than 175, as you can see. And so it took almost about 5 to 6 seconds long. So you always have to monitor your ground speed, make sure it is always as much as possible, because you're going to have many variables. Whenever possible, make sure it is always as constant and the track is constant. So let me show you what we have done. We were off the northern coast of Alexandria, and we proceeded to the station. We flew a heading of 090 for 1 minute, turned again, overshot, and turned again to intercept the inbound to Alpha X-ray Delta, flew the hold for approximately 1 minute here, 1 minute in the turn, start the clock once we're abeam, 1 minute, and we continued our turn back to Alpha X-ray Delta. And now the same thing goes for the direct entry. The direct entry, if you lie within any sector of the direct entries, the direct entry is the simplest. all you need to do is to go to Alpha X-ray Delta, turn right away, 1 minute here, 1 minute here, 1 minute here. That's it. The direct entry is the simplest, and you can determine if you are going into a direct entry by the same way we did for the parallel and the teardrop. Was if you cannot imagine it, take a paper and a pen, stick it to the screen. If you're coming from the sector of the direct entry, then you know that once you pass Alpha X-ray Delta, turn right away to heading of the outbound leg, which is in our example 090. So I hope you have been able to understand how to do a holding, and you should be able to now do the 3 entries. I strongly recommend that you should practice all of the 3 entries on any view, on most of the VORs if you have the time for it, because if you listen to this video and do not practice it, and you need to do it yourself so that you can understand how it is actually done. And so thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you soon in the next tutorial on a different subject. So I pause here and have fun. Bye.